So Scratchy,
Neighbor.
we see also that the Prime Minister brought the NARA bill to the NARA legislation to Parliament today, and the Prime Minister did something that was quite impressive today, Scratchy, in terms of the Prime Minister's presentation, which I don't know if I'm going to be able to share it tonight, or maybe Friday when I'm on. The Prime Minister spoke about this being, I'm looking for exactly the term he used, but in the meantime, this really is the government's structural push to a reconstruction, Scratchy. It's going to be very, 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 very interesting for picks up all of this and start the rebuilding process. Eh?
I don't know if it's my name, but I'm kind of like a chip out.
Scratch?
We're not hearing you.
So like something plug out on your neighbor.
No man, I'm hearing. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing it better now. And neighbor, not just any reconstruction, neighbor, but the proper urban planning, neighbor, the proper strategic planning, neighbor, that Jamaica has been wanting, neighbor, and Jamaica has been lacking, and Jamaica has been missing. That is what NARA is expected to bring, neighbor. Proper studies as to where residential communities might have to be removed because of certain areas and certain soil and stuff like that, neighbor. So I'm expecting, neighbor, NARA to be that driving force, neighbor, to kind of cut some of the bureaucratic red tapes, neighbor. Let the process be much more easier. Let the process be much more stronger as well, neighbor. And let the progress, and most importantly, neighbor, one that is very integral, where the Integrity Commissioner Wuseba can come in, neighbor, and probe it properly. So I expect, neighbor, to see NARA drive the reconstruction process going forward. And again, not just any reconstruction, strategic reconstruction, proper planning that the country was lacking, neighbor. We see as a result of Hurricane Melissa, we saw the devastation of them to a lot of these houses, neighbor. It has a lot to do with location where these houses were situated and the edge of the coast and stuff like that. And it also has to deal with, neighbor, the type of construction in terms of design and the type of materials that were used to construct these structures. So NARA is going to come with a lot of changes. It's going to push productivity, neighbor. And I think that is one of the reasons why we see the PNP have a press conference. I don't think the PNP, up to this day, neighbor, try to understand what is the real reason for NARA, what is NARA supposed to come and do, neighbor, because if they did, neighbor, they would have tried to be silent, neighbor, because I can tell you this, neighbor. A lot of these persons who are talking about the money that they get cannot build house, and the money that they get cannot do this, neighbor. The government might don't come out and say it publicly, just because the government don't want to create any form of fear or anything. I don't want a political office, I don't know, but neighbor, from my common sense, based on what I'm looking, neighbor, I think a lot of these developments that are going to be completed right now by the persons who are getting these grants, a lot of them are going to be temporary, neighbor. I am foreseeing in the future. I am seeing, neighbor, in the future where a man might put on back his roof, neighbor, and in the future, neighbor, he might still be asked to be removed from himself, neighbor, and instructed from wherever he is, neighbor, and he might be located in a different area, a much better place. I can tell you, neighbor, that I get the feeling that this is something, neighbor, temporary. When I say temporary, I don't mean 6 months or 3 months. It might be over a 5-year period, a 8-year period, a 10-year period, a 15-year period, neighbor. But I am seeing that, neighbor, where a lot of these persons, neighbor, despite them putting on back their roof and coming back to normalcy, they will be asked, neighbor, to remove in the near future, neighbor, and go to safer grounds, neighbor, or grounds that fit the type of residential living, neighbor. Because what NARA is supposed to do, neighbor, is to make sure, neighbor, that if we should get another category like Hurricane 5 or our next Hurricane Melissa, neighbor, we can withstand to certain level, neighbor, we can be resilient to certain level. And as I said earlier, it has a lot to do with location. It has a lot to do with where a lot of persons are building houses in river beds, in river channels. A lot of persons, neighbor, the structure and the materials that they are using to build these houses, neighbor, they are not strong enough. You know, they're not proof, they're not waterproof to a certain level or can prevent flooding to a certain level because of the low lying area. So there's a lot of changes, neighbor. So the PNP just need to understand, neighbor, that what is going on right now, I think it's just for a temporary time, neighbor. Now it's a temporary, again, I don't mean 5 months time. It might be 5 years time, 6 years time, 7, 8 years time. You will be asked to move because of the development that NARA is coming with. And the strategic development that NARA is coming with, neighbor, because time and time, neighbor, we have seen, neighbor, where every hurricane season is the same. It's the same set of places are being flooded out, neighbor. Whenever we get certain disaster, neighbor, it's the same thing, neighbor. Removal of zinc fences, removal of roof, blowing away and stuff like that. This is 2026. We must learn from our mistakes. We must learn from what we are doing wrong and try to fix it. Or if we don't fix it, neighbor, we're going to have to make sure that we put this on the recurring side of our budget every single year. And these are well resources, neighbor, that we need that can be channeled in other avenues to serve our interests in a way that best suits us than having to every year after I recover roof, after I fix roof. I told you that before Hurricane Melissa, the government spent nearly $400 million on hurricane burial in giving grants, neighbor, to fix roof. And it was a shame and
10 billion.
embarrassment. Yes, and it was a shame and embarrassment, neighbor, that come 1 year later, those same roofs that were rebuilt, neighbor, blew off again. So what are we going to do come this next hurricane season again after giving out 10 billion? Yeah, but the problem has to be fixed.
Yeah.
The problem has to be taken on head on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And that is why I'm saying, Scratchy, that governing is not an emotional thing where you just try to appease the people. It is how you create an environment where the people are empowered. But let's listen a little to the Prime Minister today as he spoke on the NARA bill, which you so
allow me to
eloquently
join in the expression of happiness and gratitude and celebration of the 100th birthday of someone who served this nation with great pride and indeed great competence as a Minister of Education and a Senator in this Parliament, serving both sides of the Parliament. Dr. Mavis Gilmore and I have two things in common. One, we were both Ministers of Education. And secondly, she's actually Mavis Holness. So yes, so we do have some distant relations. So I want to wish her from Parliament a happy birthday and many, 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 many more happy returns. Madam Speaker, the standing orders of the House helps us to arrange the business of the House such that everything is done orderly and transparently. And I urge members to pay close attention to the standing orders and to adhere to the standing orders. That protects both sides and ensures that the business of the House gets done in a transparent and effective way. In tabling this bill, we recognize that there are general concerns and some specific concerns with stakeholders. Internally, in the government, there are concerns. It is not something that we're cavalier in bringing to the Parliament, which is why at the earliest opportunity, we tabled the bill in long form, refined it, taken into consideration where possible, concerns that have been raised, and tabling it again. But it must be always borne in mind that we're tabling the bill against the backdrop of an emergency. So the emergency does not permit us to break the rules. I want to establish that. I've been very clear with that. We, as a democracy, and a mature democracy, we have established the process by which we address emergency situations, which means we have established emergency rules. We have a National Disaster Risk Management Act, which provides emergency rules. We have provisions in the Constitution for a state of public emergency, for emergency situations. And in establishing this bill, we will also create the laws that will ensure that the entity is able to act with expedition whilst respecting both the laws of the land and the constitution of the country, and more importantly, the perspectives held by the wide body of stakeholders who want to see transparency, but at the same time, want to see efficiency and effectiveness. A delicate balancing act, but one that I'm certain that this Parliament and this administration is capable of delivering. So, Madam Speaker, I rise to address this Honourable House on the tabling and commencement of debate on the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority Bill 2026. And this bill is one of the most consequential pieces of legislation that this Parliament has been asked to consider in the modern era of Jamaica's development. Jamaica has long been described as a country of great promise. We have an incomparable geographic position. We have a globally recognized brand in music, sports, culture, and tourism that are the envy of countries much larger than us. We have a diaspora of extraordinary talent and capital spread across the world's most prosperous economies. We have natural resources, agricultural potential, and strategic location at the crossroads of the hemispheric trade routes. Development plans, consultancy reports, and policy discussions have outlined Jamaica's transformation for decades. The vision of what Jamaica can be has existed in our national consciousness for generations. What has been missing is not the dream. What has been missing is the institutional machinery to turn that dream into delivered reality. To take the plans from the shelves and drive them through to completion at pace.
If you're hearing these words.
All right, so that's the Prime Minister today tabling the NARA bill. And Scratchy, a lot of Jamaicans, Scratchy, will find these to be kind of not the sexy political stuff, but it is a very important moment in our history, Scratchy, in terms of our development, because it is going to set the stage and the pace for what we will look like in the next couple of decades. Am I not correct?
Definitely, neighbor. Purposely built cities, neighbor. I think is what the Prime Minister always try to label that of these places, neighbor. Cities and communities, neighbor, that are purposely built, neighbor. When I say purposely built, I mean purposely built, neighbor, to fit to this, to fit the rapid change in climate change in this day and age, neighbor. The rapid, we have seen how the weather is becoming even more unpredictable in terms of flooding, neighbor, in a lot of these areas, landslides in a lot of these areas, neighbor. Persons just move in, neighbor, and build up informal settlements, informal communities, neighbor, without any case study being done. Anything being done, whether you're living in a river bank, in a river channel, whether where you live is prone to landslides, neighbor. I will see when time nature take its course, neighbor, it's the government who get the blame, neighbor. When in fact, neighbor, it is these persons or these people who go and live in these places, neighbor, without getting the relevant case study done and know where you're living and what condition you're living on. You know, so I always, when I was going to primary school, neighbor, they were saying the foolish man bleeds out upon the sun, neighbor. So we have to make sure, neighbor, that we will limit the amount of foolish men that is in our country or building houses, neighbor, and make sure, neighbor, that we put people in places and conditions where they can live and withstand, neighbor, certain. I'm not going to say you're going to withstand it 100%, but you can withstand, neighbor, certain natural disasters at a certain level. And those natural disasters should come, neighbor, and whatever course is taken, neighbor, the damage, neighbor, is not done to a certain level of extent where it costs the government certain level, neighbor, or set us back certain way in terms of our budgetary concern and stuff like that. So we have to be stronger and we have to build purposely. And that's the reason why it's a rural Jamaica, neighbor. I always tell you that no other government, neighbor, has ever done more for rural Jamaica than the Andrew Holness government, neighbor, from an infrastructure standpoint, neighbor. When you look at infrastructure that rural Jamaica is getting, neighbor, it is the San Jamaica Holness government, neighbor, who look to rural Jamaica and saw the importance and the real need for development in rural Jamaica. When you look at the plans of the government of places like Port Antonio, when you look at what the government have for down there in Lucy, These places are places, neighbor, where we need rapid development, neighbor. We need some serious form of development. These are underdevelopment areas, neighbor, and even like a real Jew is gonna embarrass you and make you look bad. And these are simple things that we should be able to withstand. But because these places, neighbor, are informal settlements, neighbor, and a lot of these informal settlements, neighbor, was born, neighbor, out of political division or for political will and political gains. And now, neighbor, we are seeing that we are paying for that, neighbor. We are paying for those painful and dreadful and distasteful, neighbor, and stupid political decision that was made back in the days, neighbor, by putting people to live in these conditions. That is what Hurricane Melissa come and show us, neighbor. We are paying for it right now, and it is causing problem. When you look at Westmoreland, a parish, neighbor, that predominantly voted and support the People's National Party. When I look at devastation down there in Westmoreland, I'm saying yes, devastation can happen, neighbor. But oh gosh, man, neighbor, these houses, neighbor, were built to a certain standard and a certain level.
Yes.
And these houses, neighbor, were in certain proper channels where residential housing is conducive, neighbor. Who wouldn't have this massive disaster? When you look at even some big lands in Westmoreland, neighbor, all they can't see, neighbor, it's just the land. The housing structures are gone fully. So that is to show you that these foundations of these houses weren't even rooted to a certain level in the foundation of the earth, neighbor. The roofing structure again was so poor, neighbor. So when I see the PNP come and talk about people getting 500,000, this can't do nothing, neighbor, I can tell you this, and I'm not shaming or embarrassing anybody, neighbor. But the 500,000 the government give, neighbor, a lot of these houses are value 500,000. A lot of these houses, neighbor, that got destroyed in Hurricane Melissa, neighbor, they never value 500,000. Not one way, shape, or form, neighbor, that identify 500,000. I know the government reach out to you now and give you a grant of $500,000, $250,000, and say to you, build upon where you can build upon. Now you're going to come and say the government is not doing enough. The government more than done enough, neighbor. The government, the greatest thing, you get a grant of 500,000. And you have a whole structure might have value less than that. It is not up to you to use your skills and your own independent thinking and your own independent self, neighbor, to advance on that 500,000 that the government give you. Because I can tell you that in your support and your loyalty to the People's National Party, you have never been given 500,000 as a cash grant before. And the PNP is the reason why you're in the situation that you're living, because they trick your grandparents, they play on your grandparents' emotion and putting up an informal settlement, and you claim to say you get land that you have no title for, no paper for, they can't even adversely possess it because the owners of these lands are paying the taxes on them. And that is the reason why we have the problem in Westmoreland right now. The owners are going back in on able to reclaim these lands. Persons who did have house for the people, and the people are telling them, say, no, they cannot really do nothing, I want my land. The people them finally get a chance, they can take over them property. And that is what is going on down there in Westmoreland. That is why we see we have the problem in neighbor. And I can tell you, neighbor, don't think, sir, this is political or what is going on, you know. Is it a coincidence that it's just persons who support the People's National Party alone, neighbor, is reeling, is crying, is murmuring from what is going on in the recovery process? Why persons who support the Jamaica Labour Party not crying, neighbor? Neighbor, one thing I can tell you, you know, Jamaica is not pretty up no sufferation in the neighbor. Whether we are PNP or we are Labour, right, I don't feel like so we get displaced, I don't feel like so we are not treated right, I will not get over, we come out, come talk. So why I'm not hearing any independent person coming on come talk? Why I'm not hearing anyone who say yes, they might vote Labour Party, but despite what going on, foolishness are going on? Why is only PNP supporters and PNP member of parliament alone about neighbor? Because they are the ones, neighbor, who lived in these informal settlements, neighbor. These informal settlements are where the large amount of the PNP votes are, neighbor. These informal settlements are what the PNP depend and strive on, neighbor, to become member of parliament. So this is the reason why you see they keeping all of these stress conference and they come with all of these member of parliament and they come with them foolish argument and they come with them foolish talk. Baseless and empty, neighbor. Simple thing we don't need government intervention and all of these problems where the PNP are bringing to the forefront at the press conference, neighbor. And it was just so ashamed, neighbor, that there was one journalist who was brave enough to tell the PNP that this is a total waste of time. And this is what we talk about. We talk about last productivity in the country. Or whatever time or whatever minute that press conference was going on for, it was a total last, neighbor, for productivity for the journalists and for these media houses, neighbor, because it didn't make one sense. Angela Brownberg or Mark Golden could have clicked in TikTok live and keep that press conference themselves. Neighbor, we need to push these people out, man. We need to call them out and let them be shamed and tell them, so listen, I'm not doing foolishness, I'm not doing madness. You guys are the reason why Jamaica is in this situation. The process of the grants being so slow and people going there and people have to stand up in line for 2-3 hours, it is a result of you fighting down needs and bringing the government to court because of needs. That you must go and tell the poor people them and stop playing on the emotions of the people them. You see, Mr. Floyd Morris him, oh gosh, man, I say if man was like, if God was like man, you see, never Floyd Morris need to step back to, you need to take 10 steps, Mr. Floyd Morris, and go sit down. Because when I try to bash the base on your disability, but you continue to come and talk about you're not seeing anything, and you're not seeing this, and you're not seeing that. Sir, come on, sir, and be real. Can you see? You talk about you don't see the government doing this, you don't see the government doing that. The PNP is a big PNP, never. So your PNP is a joke and a gimmick organization. The PNP sent Floyd Green to go around there and do the assessment as a result of the damage. Floyd Green, not Floyd Green, Floyd Morrison neighbor. The PNP neighbor sent a visually impaired man to go around the western side of the Jamaica that was impacted by Hurricane Melissa neighbor for come back with a report to them neighbor and tell them what is going on with the destruction down there. Neighbor, one thing I plan to tell you, people will say all they want to say, but sometimes you have to see for yourself. And I don't know if Mr. Floyd Green is misleading us, neighbor. He's letting us think that he's visually impaired. I don't know. But if he's misleading us, neighbor, I need to come straight because I don't see a lot of the mission that are needed, neighbor, with persons who have clear 20/20 vision, neighbor, to come back and make a report. You keep sending someone who's visually impaired and you keep coming in front of the media and talk about you don't see anything going on. You're not going to see anything at all, sir, or something was going on. You don't even know who's Mark Golding. You've never seen him before. You don't know what him look like. You don't know nothing about him.
Scratchy, I might put you on the spot, all right? But do you think that with the execution of NARA and what Andrew Holness is doing, is it that he's not just improving the infrastructure for the West, but is he also challenging the mental infrastructure for the persons of that area?
Yeah, Barry, you're 100% right. It's not just about the physical infrastructure, Harry. It is also about changing the mindset infrastructure of these persons. Because, Harry, a lot of what we are suffering from is a mindset problem. A lot of what we are suffering from is a mindset and a failure, neighbor. I feel Harry from PNP representative neighbor to show appreciation and feel appreciated for what is being done from a government standpoint. So what the government is trying to do, neighbor, is trying to change the two, Harry. Because once I can tell you, Harry, if you have a wall, and it is not painted for many years, nobody not gonna show no regard and no respect for that wall, But paint it now, even if it's just 2 months, them show respect for it. At some point in time, respect is gonna show it for it. So I can tell you, neighbor, that as long as Jamaica continue to advance, the PNP will always become irrelevant, neighbor, because the PNP is thriving slum, the PNP is thriving chaos, the PNP is thriving high unemployment, the PNP is thriving crime and violence, the PNP is thriving poverty. That is when PNP was at them utmost best. That is when PNP was winning election, back election, when Jamaica suffered from all of those things at the highest level. Why now? When Jamaica is more technologically advanced, Jamaicans are much more brighter, Jamaican is moving in the right direction, Jamaicans know what they want. Why now, when things are advancing, PNP is becoming irrelevant? Why? You should also your political organization that rule this country the longest and consecutive election. You should have some form of relevancy right now, but you cannot have any relevancy because you campaign for dirty water and gutter water. That's what you campaign on. You campaign for sewage water running a community. That's what you strive on. You campaign for bad roads. That's how you build Jamaica on. So right now with the development of Jamaica, persons are showing appreciation. It might be slow, neighbor, but I am telling you that it's getting there. Persons are become more aware neighbor of their situation, and persons are now showing appreciation and showing, okay, this is what I want, this is what my life should require, this is what I should get. What I was getting was mediocre, was basic. Proper roads is something neighbor where you don't have to black road for. You see, that is something that you deserve. It's not something where you have to beg for. PNP make it the NARA neighbor for you to go on black road and feel like with a black road, you will get road. If you got black road, you will get water. That is what PNP did from the 90s. And Jamaicans strive on that. A lot of communities are now getting water neighbor and they never black no road. A lot of communities are now getting road and they never black no road. Is that because the government see the need for these things in your community? Neighbor, PNP is Jamaica's biggest problem. You say it all the while. that it is very difficult for one government led by Jamaica alone, his neighbor, is trying to change the mindset of Jamaicans. He's trying to tell Jamaicans that the brown envelope days is over. Jamaica knows the time for each and every of us to add to the productivity of the country and see how best we can advance the country. And you have one now upon the other and keep a press conference to the neighbor who prey on these people emotions, neighbor, and trying to tell these people that, listening, every single needs that you want, if you head earth to the government, supposed to give upon that. If your woman give a bun and Joan is to tell you why she give a bun. Every single thing neighbor they push on the government, that is what the PNP do. They are trying to use the 400,000 people neighbor to reject the government neighbor, to have some form of bad thinking and bad energy and bad vibes towards the government neighbor. But I can tell Mark Golden neighbor that they are fighting a losing battle because constituencies neighbor are made up of both JLP and both PNP communities. And once the PNP them neighbor continue to see persons who live in these JLP constituencies neighbor continue to advance them life, continue to drive car, continue to get work, continue to add on 1 and 2 bedroom, add on kitchen, neighbor, they are going to want to. And if they don't want to, they are going to get jealous. And when they get the jealous, they're going to lead to crime and violence. But thank God again, we have a proper police force neighbor. We don't have a corrupted police force to that level no more. So them can't come in the jealousy and come war labor rights are people who support and choose Jamaica and want to advance themselves. They have no other choice right now, neighbor, but to fall in line. And that is why the PNP is losing traction every single day. And I tell you today, they have a stress conference, and it was the worst, neighbor. If I was a leader of the PNP, I would have never keep a stress conference like that. We're not from the military, everybody's turn up across and want to come and step for. I would have had a nice decorated room, neighbor. I would have rented a ballroom at the Hilton or one of the Pegasus or one of those nice places in Jamaica and keep my nice press conference. So at the press conference, neighbor, even if what I am saying don't look good, my surrounding look good, and my whatever I set up look good, neighbor, so catch personal attention. I couldn't watch it, neighbor. It was an eyesore. It was a total eyesore. Dr. Dayton Campbell, I realized you dye your beard. I realized you dye your beard. You look like a Crispus. You look like a Crispus to them, Mr. Campbell.
Oh gosh.
I realized you dye your beard, Mr. Campbell. I will look good if I really you today. I don't look good and say, wait, I didn't that. I couldn't believe it. I would look good and say, wait, I didn't that. And Dr. Campbell that.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, the man damn beard. The man look different. Yeah, my granny would have said look like a police post.
Oh God.
You don't think that it was comical, Scratchy?
You say neighbor look good and say, wait, this Dr. Campbell that? The man damn beard neighbor and change up power to that.
So you just need to rub the butter on him out now.
Oh gosh.
We say, Harry, my granny would have said, what a please puss. What a please puss. Man, I change him image neighbor, man. Andrew Michael won this cause this in the neighbor. Andrew won this neighbor cause this. Andrew won this and members of his cabinet neighbor. And based on them carry themselves, based on them dress, his aim is the reason why you see Dayton Campbell are changing him appearance. That is the reason why you see when you see the Rasta one change of him appearance and full female aisle all over him forehead, all over him face. And you notice neighbor, each and every one of them change them glasses neighbor. Them are wear one different glasses now, make you look more formal and make you look like somebody, you know. Every one of them change them glasses neighbor. They are learning neighbor, because one thing, when them look at Andrew and them team neighbor, they have no choice neighbor but to formulate and get themselves in order.